For those of you who don't know what high intensity interval training is, it's basically a style of cardio where you alternate between periods of all out intensity and rest. The reason HIIT became so popular is due to the number of studies supporting its superior role in fat loss compared to steady state cardio. In addition, if you look at the bodies of sprinters and athletes whose training regimen is mainly composed of HIIT, you'll see that they're almost always lean and muscular. There are several mechanisms that enable HIIT to provide such effective fat loss while minimizing muscle loss, but I'll discuss that in a different video. In this video, however, I'm going to discuss how you should utilize HIIT in order to get to sub 10% body fat, as this is the exact method that I personally use to get me there. And although many people have a general idea as to what HIIT is, they don't really do it in a way that maximizes its effectiveness. So in this video, I'm going to be going through the 3 most important things that you need to know when it comes to HIIT. And these are the best type and intensity for your HIIT sessions, and how to progressively overload HIIT to avoid fat loss plateaus. Let's start off with what is the best type of HIIT to do. So you can basically choose any type of cardio exercise and turn it into HIIT, but I suggest sticking to the 3 most effective ones, which are sprinting, rowing, and cycling. And this is because research has shown that the more a cardio exercise mimics the movements used in muscle building movements, like the squat or deadlift for example, the less it hinders strength and muscle growth. Since these exercises highly mimic exercises like the squat and seated row, they will likely be the best options to help you maintain strength and size during a cut. Now, intensity is the most important factor regarding HIIT, yet many people don't get it right. The primary difference between high and low intensity intervals should be your speed and not the amount of resistance used. So when you're cycling, for example, you want to focus more on increasing the speed rather than the resistance during the work intervals. You also need to be working at a very high intensity during the work intervals. Most studies show that you need to reach between 85 to 95% of your max heart rate during your high intensity intervals in order to reap the majority of benefits from HIIT, which will also lead to greater fat loss. You can tell if you're at this level of intensity if you've reached a point where you can't comfortably hold a conversation because you're breathing so heavily to get as much air into your body as possible. And the goal of HIIT is to stay at this high intensity for as long as possible during the work intervals while still being able to reach this high intensity again for several more cycles. The higher intensity your work intervals are and the longer your work intervals are at that intensity, the more effective the HIIT workout will be. I suggest that a good starting point is to perform your work interval at 80% of your maximum intensity for 20 seconds and use a work to rest ratio of 1:2. This basically means that, for example, you'll sprint at 80% of your max effort for 20 seconds and then actively rest, such as walking, for 40 seconds and then repeat again for a given number of cycles. But as you start doing this more often, your body will adapt and you will reach a fat loss plateau, which is when you will have to apply progressive overload in order to continue losing fat. You can do this using 5 variables: increasing the intensity of your work intervals, increasing the time of your work intervals, decreasing the time of your rest intervals, increasing the number of cycles you do, or increasing the frequency of your workouts. To make this simple, I'm going to use an example of how you would progressively overload HIIT using the 5 variables. Let's use John as an example. John is sitting at around 15% body fat and is ready to get under 10% body fat for the first time in his life. John already has a solid cardiovascular base and often does steady state cardio, but has never experimented with HIIT. Let's say that he really likes cycling, so he decided to stick to that form of HIIT, but keep in mind that you can always switch up the exercise you use for HIIT. You don't just have to stick to one form of HIIT. So I would suggest that John start out with 1 HIIT workout per week. A good starting point for his HIIT workout would be 5 cycles of 20 seconds of 80% of all-out intensity cycling for the work period, and the 40 seconds of light cycling for the active rest period. After around 2 weeks of this, John should increase the frequency of his workout from 1 time per week to 2 times per week and do this for another 2 weeks. Then, John can slowly increase the intensity of each workout by either increasing the length of the 20-second work interval, decreasing the length of the 40-second rest interval, or increasing the number of cycles performed in each session. Let's just say that he decides to increase the work interval to 30 seconds, decrease his rest interval to 30 seconds, and increase the number of cycles performed to 7 cycles. He does this for 2 more weeks, then decides to overload again using the 5 variables. So basically all you're doing is progressively overloading the HIIT routine using the 5 variables. And this is just a very basic example of how you could do so. But if you already have experience with HIIT, then don't be afraid to do more of an aggressive overload each week. And also don't be afraid to start off with a more intense workout than the one that I showed. And also for the best results, you want to use HIIT with a weightlifting routine. And you can also use low intensity steady state cardio on rest days or days that you don't perform HIIT. And lastly, remember that you always want to do a proper warm up and cool down period before each HIIT session, since HIIT is really intense and you want to make sure your joints and your muscles are properly warmed up before you work out. And that's basically it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, then don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.